of my thoughts is not calculated to lighten the time you must pass here, but you have brought this upon yourselves, and shall judge. We were speaking of York Minster just now. My story shall have some reference to it. Let us call it, The 5 Sisters of York. After a murmur of approbation from the other passengers, during which the fastidious lady drank a glass of punch unobserved, the grey-headed gentleman thus went on. A great many years ago, for the 15th century was scarce 2 years old at the time, and King Henry the 4th sat upon the throne of England, there dwelt, in the ancient city of York, 5 maiden sisters, the subjects of my tale. These 5 sisters were all of surpassing beauty. The eldest was in her 23rd year, the second a year younger, the third a year younger than the second, and the fourth a year younger than the third. They were tall, stately figures, with dark flashing eyes and hair of jet. Dignity and grace were in their every movement, and the fame of their great beauty had spread through all the country round. But, if the 4 elder sisters were lovely, how beautiful was the youngest, a fair creature of 16! The blushing tints in the soft bloom on the fruit, or the delicate painting on the flower, were not more exquisite than was the blending of the rose and lily in her gentle face, or the deep blue of her eye. The vine, in all its elegant luxuriance, is not more graceful than were the clusters of rich brown hair that sported round her brow. If we all had hearts like those which beat so lightly in the bosoms of the young and beautiful, what a heaven this earth would be! If, while our bodies grow old and withered, our hearts could but retain their earthly youth and freshness, of what avail would be our sorrows and sufferings? But the faint image of Eden which is stamped upon them in childhood, chafes and rubs in our rough struggles with the world, and soon wears away; too often to leave nothing but a mournful black remaining. The heart of this fair girl bounded with joy and gladness. Devoted attachment to her sisters, and a fervent love of all beautiful things in nature, were its pure affections. Her gleesome voice and merry laugh were the sweetest music of their home. She was its very light and life. The brightest flowers in the garden were reared by her. The caged birds sang when they heard her voice, and pined when they missed its sweetness. Alice, dear Alice! What a living thing within the sphere of her gentle witchery could fail to love her? You may seek in vain now for the spot on which these sisters lived, for their very names have passed away, and dusty antiquaries tell of them as of a fable. But they dwelt in an old wooden house, old even in those days, with overhanging gables and balconies of rudely carved oak, which stood within a pleasant orchard, and was surrounded by a rough stone wall, whence a stout archer might have winged an arrow to St. Mary's Abbey. The old abbey flourished then; and the 5 sisters, living on its fair domains, paid yearly dues to the black monks of St. Benedict, to which fraternity it belonged. It was a bright and sunny morning in the pleasant time of summer, when one of those black monks emerged from the abbey portal, and bent his steps towards the house of the fair sisters. Heaven above was blue, and earth beneath was green. The river glistened like a path of diamonds in the sun. The birds poured forth their songs from the shady trees. The lark soared high above the waving corn, and the deep buzz of insects filled the air. Everything looked gay and smiling; but the holy man walked gloomily on, with his eyes bent upon the ground. The beauty of the earth is but a breath, and man is but a shadow. What sympathy could a holy preacher have with either? With eyes bent upon the ground, then, or only raised enough to prevent his stumbling over such obstacles as lay in his way, the religious man moved slowly forward until he reached a small postern in the wall of the sisters' orchard, through which he passed, closing it behind him. The noise of soft voices in conversation, and of merry laughter, fell upon his ears ere he had advanced many paces; and raising his eyes higher than was his humble wont, he descried, at no great distance, the 5 sisters seated on the grass, with Alice in the centre, all busily plying their customary task of embroidering. "Save you, fair daughters," said the friar, and fair in truth they were. Even a monk might have loved them as choice masterpieces of his Maker's hand. The daughters saluted the holy man with becoming reverence, and the eldest motioned him to a mossy seat beside them. But the good friar shook his head, and bumped himself down on a very hard stone; at which no doubt approving angels were gratified. "Ye were merry, daughters," said the monk. "You know how light of heart sweet Alice is," replied the eldest sister, passing her fingers through the tresses of the smiling girl. "And what joy and cheerfulness it wakes up within us, to see all nature beaming in brightness and sunshine, father," added Alice, blushing beneath the stern look of the recluse. The monk answered not, save by a grave inclination of his head, and the sisters pursued their task in silence. "Still wasting the precious hours," said the monk at length, turning to the eldest sister as he spoke, "still wasting the precious hours in this vain trifling! Alas, alas, that the few bubbles on the surface of eternity, all that heaven wills we should see of that dark deep stream, should be so lightly scattered." "Father," urged the maiden, pausing, as did each of the others in her busy task, "we have prayed at matins, our daily alms have been distributed at the gate, the sick peasants have been tended, all our morning tasks have been performed. I hope our occupation is a blameless one?" "See here," said the friar, taking the frame from her hand, "an intricate winding of gaudy colors, without purpose or object, unless it be that one day it is destined for some vain ornament, to minister to the pride of your frail and giddy sex. Day after day has been employed upon this senseless task, and yet it is not half accomplished. The shade of each departed day falls upon our graves, and the worm exults as he beholds it, to know that we are hastening thither. Daughters, is there no better way to pass the fleeting hours?" The 4 elder sisters cast down their eyes as if abashed by the holy man's reproof, but Alice raised hers, and bent them mildly on the friar. "Our dear mother," said the maiden, "heaven rest her soul!" "Amen!" cried the friar in a deep voice. "Our dear mother," faltered the fair Alice, "was living when these long tasks began, and bade us, when she could be no more, ply them in all discretion and cheerfulness, in our leisure hours. She said that if in harmless mirth and maidenly pursuits we passed those hours together, they would prove the happiest and most peaceful of our lives, and that if, in later times, we went forth into the world, and mingled with its cares and trials, if, allured by its temptations and dazzled by its glitter, we ever forgot that love and duty which should bind, in holy ties, the children of one loved parent, a glance at the old work of our common girlhood would waken the good thoughts of bygone days, and soften our hearts to affection and love." "Alice speaks truly, father," said the elder sister somewhat proudly, and so saying she resumed her work, as did the others. It was a kind of sampler of large size, that each sister had before her. The device was of a complex and intricate description, and the pattern and colors of all 5 were the same. The sisters bent gracefully over their work. The monk, resting his chin upon his hands, looked from one to the other in silence. "How much better," he said at length, "to shun all such thoughts and chances, and, in the peaceful shelter of the church, devote your lives to heaven. Infancy, childhood, the prime of life, and old age, wither as rapidly as they crowd upon each other. Think how human dust rolls onward to the tomb, and turning your faces steadily towards that goal, avoid the cloud which makes its rise among the pleasures of the world, and cheats the senses of their votaries. The veil, daughters, the veil!" "Never, sisters," cried Alice. "Barter not the light and air of heaven, and the freshness of earth and all the beautiful things which breathe upon it, for the cold cloister and the cell. Nature's own blessings are the proper goods of life, and we may share them sinlessly together. To die is our heavy portion, but, oh, let us die with life about us. When our cold hearts cease to beat, let warm hearts be beating near. Let our last look be upon the bounds which God has set to his own bright skies, and not on stone walls and bars of iron. Dear sisters, let us live and die, if you list, in this green garden's compass. Only shun the gloom and sadness of a cloister, and we shall be happy." The tears fell fast from the maiden's eyes as she closed her impassioned appeal, and hid her face in the bosom of her sister. "Take comfort, Alice," said the eldest.